So last year we were making the case that EUSA needed to be working for students and with students, engaging them in what it does and working with them genuinely. I think that over this past year, the case for that has become stronger than ever. EUSA is not at the moment relevant to students, it's out of touch. It's an organisation that claims to represent 30,000 students here at Edinburgh University, but it doesn't do that well. So that's why I'm running again. I gave a lot of thought to it because I'm in my fourth year now. I would like to be writing my dissertation right now, but it seemed to me that the case that I was making last year for a EUSA that works with and engages students is as pertinent now as it was, if not more pertinent now than it was last year. What specific things would I have done that the current administration haven't done? I think that, as I was talking about last year, working with students is something that's so important to me, and that means not just, there's this acronym within student unionism which is GOATing, which is going out and talking, which means just going and knocking on doors and talking to students, or going and talking to them while they're sitting down in a cafe or whatever. And I don't think that really counts. I don't think that's good enough. I think that's quite a superficial way of looking at student involvement. If I'd been elected last year, and if I'm elected this year, I'll be wanting to reach out and build relationships with students across campus, meet people that I haven't met already. I think that one of the biggest problems that you can face as a sabbatical officer is that you are in so many university committee meetings, you're in so many meetings with student reps who are already involved in what's going on with EUSA, that you can get to the end of the week and not have met anyone new. So I think that there's an important part of the role that is self-reflection, going, what is it that I'm doing right, what is it that I'm doing wrong, and at the end of the week, how many people have I met this week that I didn't know before? Often sabbatical candidates will come along and say, oh, we want cheaper drinks in TVA, and that doesn't mean anything unless you say exactly what it is that you want to do. I want midweek £2 drinks deals so that you can get a £2 pint to start a night out or to relax after the library. When I started university, in my first year, pints were £1.80, and TVA was a fantastic space, a place where people wanted to start a night out, a place where people wanted to relax and hang out with their friends. I don't think it's like that at the moment. I don't think it's a hub of student activity in the way that it could be, and I think that having midweek £2 drinks deals, which would bring people in through the doors, therefore increasing demand and increasing the profit, even though the price is lower. So, so I am a trustee, and you will recognise that as a trustee we make collective decisions. I think that in particular over the stuff that was talked about in the meeting last night, that stuff should have been more open much earlier. People should have been allowed to know what went on and should have been allowed to make a decision on it earlier. That's clear. I can't say exactly what it was that I did around that as an individual on the trustee board, but I can say that as a candidate for the office of president, that if I'm elected, things like that shouldn't be held back.
Do you think you running for a second term gives him an unfair advantage?
I wouldn't say it's an unfair advantage. Certainly it's an advantage in terms of name recognition, but no, it's not unfair.
You say in your manifesto we need to take back EUSA. What specifically do we need to take back, and who from?
Yep, so I think a lot of the problems in the past year have been very much a struggle between elected reps and management. So it's both in terms of changing the way EUSA works and changing the ethos of the institution to ensure that it is willing to campaign and act in the best interests of students. I've been pushing for greater transparency my whole time on the trustee board, which has been difficult, and trying to be as public as I legally can, which again is difficult. But also I've been involved in the recruitment of 3 new external trustees who are, I think, going to make a big difference, and they are experts in their field, alongside some new senior managers. I mean, people are often put off by if you even mention sort of mental health problems, and people go, oh. But I find the problems I have are really quite core to the political views I hold, and have also massively affected my university career so far. And I know that when I talk about it, I often get loads of people coming up to me and saying, in private, sort of wanting to talk about it, and that people want to talk about it, but it's often you've got to sort of take that step to challenge the stigma. And
what specifically do you think we can do to reduce the counselling waiting times?
I think so. I'm quite involved in through email lists. I regularly contact people in disability services and counselling services across the UK. So keep in loop in what's happening across the UK. And Edinburgh does not do very well. It's a tiny proportion of the university's budget, but it makes a massive difference to so many students' lives. So simply be making the case that this very small increase in budget, relatively speaking, will make a massive difference to students and staff.
So you say in the video that EUSA has changed this year into something that we don't recognise. What specifically do you think has changed?
I think in terms of the way EUSA has been, its constitution has been changed, I think that EUSA attempted to make the structure, the union, a little bit more democratic with the way the different councils are separated. What I think has happened is that certain students, certain sabbatical officers that have very specific political interests are voicing those. I think that's extremely important to represent students. However, I do feel that that's not representative of the majority of students at the university, and I think these very, very strong political interests are alienating a lot of students from wanting to get engaged and involved with our union because they're not quite sure how to approach it. And I think there can be other ways that current and past sabbatical officers could have communicated what they want to accomplish.
Which specific sabbaticals and policies are you referring to? Are these the people that we're taking EUSA back from?
Interesting. My slogan, taking EUSA back from, is more about taking EUSA back for the students so that's representative of students. That sounds very vague, but I think the point is that I'm not going to name specific sabbatical officers. I think that I respect the current sabbatical officers. I've worked with them very closely. But yes, there are particular policies, whether or not it depends on what you agree with in terms of Princess Sian and the Chancellor, and also some of the motions that are put forward against the HERE record. So I think it depends on how you feel about these things, but taking back EUSA is about making sure EUSA is representative of the majority and that we feel like this is our union representing our voice, the majority voice.
One of the things in your manifesto is having a second societies fair in January. How
Yes.
would this differ from the existing societies fair that we have as a refreshers fair?
Okay, it wouldn't differ in terms of its structure and the way it's laid out. It would just give students a second opportunity to explore societies. I think Freshers Week is very hectic. There's a lot going on. Students are trying to fit a lot in that first week. So I think having a refreshers would give students another opportunity to maybe approach societies they didn't know about, didn't have a chance to interact with. It's just almost a refreshers, a reintroduction, a second chance. But also get societies, give them an opportunity to get some new membership and maybe collaborate with societies they didn't know existed. We have over 300, and I think we need as many opportunities for all students to be able to have access to them.
So how would what you want to do differ from the January refreshers fair that we already have?
It would differ in the sense that this freshers, it would still be located at Pleasance, but it would just be a replica of the first Freshers Week Societies Fair. So I know that there's already refreshers happening and it's not necessarily well advertised. A lot of students don't know what's going on. It kind of overlaps with EUSA Global's week. I think we need to promote it more. So it wouldn't differ. It would just be an add-on. It'd be a day. It'd be a Societies Day, much like the one that we host in the beginning of term first year.
You say in your video that we can choose the values of diversity and equality.
Yes.
And that's a choice that students face in this election. Is that something you don't think other candidates represent? Is that what specifically do you think makes you the candidate that represents diversity and equality and other candidates not?
I feel that all candidates are representing equality, diversity, inclusivity. When I said choose, I meant that we need to choose to make sure that is maintained. I don't think my wording of choose was in reference to the diversity, equality, and inclusivity. I think all candidates seriously represent that. But personally, I was the Vice Black Minority Ethnic Student Convener first year, helped launch Black History Month. I'm currently on the NUS Scotland Black Students Campaign. I'm the International Student Action Group Convener, and I'm also Vice President of North American Society. And it's always so obnoxious to rattle on about that, but I embody diversity, equality, inclusivity, representation, and that's why I feel I'd be particularly able to represent students in a diverse way.
So you promised in your manifesto to lower prices across campus. Which specific prices do you want to lower, and how would you sort of pay for those decreases?
Yes, well, the feedback that I'm getting from students is that they really want to see cheaper pints. Now, because the information that EUSA gives us about the financial statements isn't available to everyone, I can't say that I will take a specific entry in the balance sheet and contribute it towards the cost of pints. What I can promise is I've got fantastic financial and business training, and if you were to put me in the situation where I could look at these statements, I could almost promise you that we could find a way to do that. What things do I think that EUSA could do to decrease the current deficit? You mean the deficit within its balance sheets?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, the information is really not transparent with EUSA because of its ties as a charity, as an organisation. I think if you were to put me in the position where we could view the financial statements, we could definitely come up with some sort of solution. In general, what I'm pushing for with EUSA is efficiency, because I think that there are some areas that could greatly be improved, not only in the running of the services, but also in the way that wastage is dealt with, the way that services are paid for. I think, we need to just tighten things up a bit. What do I think makes me in the position to represent all students? Well, I've spent the last year as an elected school rep for the business school. I have taken so much feedback and passed that forward to the academic council and also to my school's council. I made a manifesto last year and I kept every single one of those promises, which I'm very proud about. I'm the only candidate. You can get left wing, right wing by the bucket load, you can get activists by the bucket load. I'm the only candidate that's central, and I have the training just to be able to go into a position like this and do the role well. I believe so strongly that students should be represented through their sabbatical officers. Do I think the EUSA has a problem with transparency at the moment? Well, I think transparency is a word that's being thrown around a whole lot, especially in these elections. Obviously, the student body obviously feels that there is transparency, it's a problem. What would I do to fix that? I think that we need to recognise that EUSA is tied by a lot of company law and also charity law. But I think what we could do with the SAB officers in particular is have them report back on how they're progressing, have them report back on their manifestos, because this only wouldn't improve accountability, it would improve accountability to the students that voted them in. It would also improve the services that we provide next year. We've got to recognise that the SABs only work for a year. It'd be great information to build on for next year's SABs if they knew what was happening, what problems the SABs have came across, and how we can improve that for next year.
So you previously stood as a Defend Edinburgh candidate for a number of elections. Why have you decided to leave the group and stand as an independent?
I believe it's very important to contest these elections on very progressive politics and very secure politics and principles that appeal to the electorate. I believe Defend Edinburgh as a group has done very well in the past in terms of elections. I believe problems have arisen more recently in terms of the way it's operated. I think it's developed into more of a group that hasn't attempted to engage with the student body as a whole and hasn't really sought to find where the student body is at. I think it's very important that we have a candidate who wins the election who is looking to stand up for students on important issues such as student welfare, on academic issues, and who is essentially there and has a very good opportunity of winning. I previously won the NUS delegate election, came first in that election. I believe that having done a lot of door knocking, spoke to a lot of students over the past few days, I think the policies that I'm putting forward are cutting with students and students believe in them. So therefore I thought it was very important to stand as an independent. I've decided to say that I'll take a living wage because I think it's important to restore the trust in EUSA of the student body. I also don't view the position of president as a job like any other job. I view it as an important position to represent students. I believe you're there to do a job for students and to stand up for students and campaign for them. I've been a campaigner all my time at university. I've campaigned against cuts, I've campaigned against youth unemployment, I've campaigned on issues of social justice and international justice. I want to use this position as well to campaign on the issues that are there for students. So that's why I've decided to take the living wage of £7.55 an hour instead of the £22,000 sabbatical wage.
What specific things make you think that EUSA is currently out of touch with students?
I believe a lot of issues have arisen over the past few months, and in fact over the last year. Most recently, I think the censorship of the student newspaper has outraged students on campus. The censorship in its sense as well, which asked for no criticism of EUSA whatsoever from papers, I believe was an obscene attack on the freedom of the student press. And I think this has highlighted the fact that EUSA has become too insular, has become too involved in itself, and hasn't actually attempted to engage with students and look at where students are at. So I think that has highlighted a lot of issues. I think there's massive issues and massive challenges facing Edinburgh University students, such as on housing, such as on education. We get voted the worst for teaching in the UK in a Sunday Times poll last year. Considering this is one of the most expensive universities in Britain, a very important university, I think these are the issues that EUSA has to be challenging itself on. It has to get out of Potter Row, it has to get out of its insular way of looking at things, and it has to actually appeal and attempt to engage with the vast majority of students who are concerned about their education, who are concerned about housing, and who are concerned about welfare, and who are very concerned as well about student democracy, and that is something we've got to put to the forefront.